Joel, I'm excited to have you on. I mean, you're kind of the host ecosystem here, all things considered. We're here on your home turf in Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
You're with the Pittsburgh Robotics Network. So I have to, maybe we do a little history lesson first. Why was Pittsburgh so poised to become such a robotics and, let's say, a technology hub of the greater Midwest? I never know if Pittsburgh's Midwest or not.
Well, first of all, it's the hub of the world.
Okay.
Let's start with that.
You must be from here, like from here.
We're thinking a lot bigger and broader than that. Well, first, let me say it's great to be the host.
Yeah.
Really great to have industry influencers here and to have our fellow clusters, which we announced today, a new alliance amongst robotics clusters between Boston, Pittsburgh, and the Bay Area. So we're thrilled, to have this opportunity. Why Pittsburgh? So this is why we're doing this. I was the CEO of a robotics company here that was trying to raise money, hire talent, find customers, build partnerships, and I would get that question. The interesting thing is those that knew the industry the best, they're like, yeah, Pittsburgh's one of the top, in the world, if not the top two, if not the best. But then you would be talking to an investor and they would say, why Pittsburgh? And I can go fairly far back, but I will simplify. It really comes down to engineering talent. And why did we have this community of engineers and this depth of skills and experience? A lot of it has to do with the steel industry. And really a lot of that dates all the way back to raw resources, right? We were rich as a Midwestern area in the United States to have coal and coal deposits and other natural resources. That brought development of, it brought the coal industry, the steel industry, but it also led to the development of technologies like the railroad air brake by Westinghouse. And Westinghouse became a very large company in the Pittsburgh region. And what they ultimately did is that they ended up turning to innovation, right? And so they actually envisioned a robotic solution back in 1939 at the New York World's Fair. And so they've kind of brought this image out into the public. But fast forward, they made investments and were responsible for launching the Robotics Institute at Carnegie Mellon University, executives within Westinghouse and also leaders within CMU. So, the story was always about raw resource leading to innovation, leading to new markets. Well, we now have a new raw resource in this emerging industry, which is technical talent and robotics talent. And a lot of that has been driven by Carnegie Mellon University. And so now that has led to innovation and to new ideas and new companies, which is now leading to new markets. And so we're following that same story.
When I was talking to Andra, I was asking, hey, what's the strength of the ecosystem in Silicon Valley, right? You've got the investor community out there. Would you say the engineering talent, that tech talent, is that the strength of Pittsburgh, or is there more to that as well?
Well, it is the talent. I mean, obviously we have smart people and we have a lot of them, and we're actually leading a lot of new developments and breakthroughs in basic science in applications. But something I've learned just recently is that we also have I think a unique culture. And that was just discussed, that subject was broached recently in one of the recent panel presentations. We like to work on difficult problems, and it's more about the work. Someone said to me recently, it's not about sizzle. It's about working on identifying real problems that affect us all in our societies and coming up with tangible solutions to that. And so it's about the work. Yeah. Now that's one of our strengths, right? And so we have this amazing culture where people think about big problems in big ways. Red Whitaker, one of the pioneers in the industry and a pioneer here in Pittsburgh, largely credited with launching the autonomous vehicle industry, through his students and the work that they did with Grand DARPA, is now working on space exploration. He's setting up a space portal in Pittsburgh. That's thinking big, putting a space portal in Pittsburgh.
That is huge.
Right? And so there is that mentality that we can really tackle these very large problems. Now, that's our strength, but it also can be one of our weaknesses or an opportunity or a new opportunity because, we do tend to be very engineering and technology focused. So that is really one thing that the PRN is looking to complement what's happening here in the region is to bring commercial talent. and to bring new partners
Mm-hmm.
and bring investors to town and create a lot of those strategic industry connections
Yeah.
to a number of these 100 robotics companies that we have in our ecosystem today.
Joel, I've got to ask you about your career as well, because before you were, let's say, an ecosystem, a cluster leader, I mean, you were working with these companies, right? You were trying to get funding and things like that. What did you learn from that experience that's helped you in this role now?
So I've worked with 3 robotics companies,
Mm-hmm.
all here in Pittsburgh. It started with Sigrid back
Yep.
in 2006.
Big name.
Very early, and they're
Mhm.
doing great. Great company and a very big name, leader in their market space. And then I worked with a very small company, just 2 people, PhD
Mhm.
and a master's co-founders, and really helped them build their business plan and position them in the marketplace. And that was ultimately acquired by Autodesk.
Mhm.
And then most recently as CEO of IM Robotics. A company with a cutting-edge solution for manipulation off of a mobile platform, which is extremely difficult to do. I've learned a lot. It's capital intensive.
Mhm.
You get a lot of attention from customers.
Mhm.
With exciting solutions and exciting technology. So getting to a pilot or a proof of concept, while difficult, is certainly doable at this stage. But getting in, to the sale, establishing a presence within your customers in the market, and then ultimately beginning to scale that is extremely difficult. And it really comes down to, are you solving the problem that matters to the customer?
Yeah.
And what are the basic economics, behind it? So in terms of building a commercial, building the commercial side of these businesses, I've learned a great deal,
Yeah.
both from successes, but probably more from failures.
Well, I also have to ask, right? A word that sticks out in your answer there is capital intensive, right?
Mhm.
And we're at an event that's a mix of academia, investors, high growth companies, right? And I feel like that can scare investors, right? When they hear capital intensive, especially when we're coming out of a very SaaS driven world, right? That's been the flavor for like the past couple decades, it feels like. So how do people overcome that with investors, right?
Well, it was mentioned during the conference that we believe we're reaching an inflection point.
Yeah.
Definitely the case, and an inhibitor 5-10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But now the costs of a lot of the common components are coming down, especially and this is true. This is a typical market development curve for any new industry.
Mm-hmm.
Right, where you have a lot of specialized materials and components at a higher cost, much lower volumes that are going into the marketplace.
Yeah.
Now we're starting to see companies that are succeeding. So components like sensors, CPUs and GPUs, and other devices are coming down. So the BOMs of a lot of these solutions are coming down. You're also having companies that are understanding that there needs to be a mix of a nice hardware solution,
Mm-hmm.
but also business models wrapped around changing the business processes or having a positive impact on the business process. So it's not always about the best robot. It's, do you understand how the customer does business, and how are you going to make that better? And really address their top priorities. And then a lot of companies, are deriving value from the data that's being collected from these machines, in the space. So actually, most robotics companies are predominantly software driven. And if you look at the development teams, they weigh more towards software development than they do hardware. It's still very much a physical game. So when I talk to my colleagues out there, we're all discussing the fact not to become as enamored with, the physical object that we're doing. So, sometimes, taking the simple approach is the best approach to going into the marketplace. But there are still those, transformational areas like autonomous vehicles that really do require doing some of that hard work of solving some of these hard technical problems. I mean, if we're really going to change our lives in terms of lives and property and damage, avoided, reduction of the impact of the climate change, making us more efficient in our lives, giving us a better balance in our lives, we really need to achieve those high levels of autonomy. The trick will be, what are the business models incrementally on the way there?
Yeah. Well, I think events like this are also going to help getting the right people together, getting everyone having those conversations. I think when we were chatting last night, you mentioned you're doing like this on a monthly basis, if not more, like having these type of rendezvous.
Yeah, we do a mix of because of the pandemic, we got into doing webinars, and we found that webinars were really a way to get our message out to a broader audience.
Yeah.
And so that really is an outreach strategy for us.
Yeah.
We've met so many people either sitting on our panels, moderating them, or even participating. And that content, as you know, can be saved and repurposed and downloaded at any time. We're very happy to be back in person.
Yeah.
It's really important to have our member companies out talking to these business leaders and these industry leaders who have amazing networks. And that was one of my experiences during COVID is as I was talking to folks like JP Morgan and Dentons. They have very extensive industry networks that are extremely interested in what's happening in this space because it truly is the next new economy. For a lot of us, and robotics or autonomous technology is really going to impact nearly every major industry that's out there. Now, it won't be a robot, but it's going to be a machine that makes a process or a business, or a task, better or easier. So there's huge opportunity.
Yeah. Well, kudos to Cascadia Capital for bringing this crew together. Last question for you is, what's your prediction for robotics, automation, AI in the next 3 years, whether it's Pittsburgh specific or global?
Yeah, I think what it's going to be is it's about just growth. We really saw coming out of the pandemic, before the pandemic, a lot of our companies were doing proof of concepts and pilots with customers.
Yeah.
So in some way, industries have been experimenting with this technology, and then the pandemic happened, right? And then a labor problem became even more pronounced. And so almost overnight, you saw amazing growth from 30% to 100% growth in certain industry segments for the use of this technology. They had already become familiar with it.
Yeah.
Right. And so we're going to see that continued growth because the labor problem is not getting any better in a lot of industries. So what I see in the next 3 years is execution. I also think that there needs to be that next level of sophistication on bringing solutions to marketplace and not just technologies.
Yeah.
Right. And that's my hope for the Pittsburgh region and for our colleagues in other areas. That's why I think conferences like this are really important is to have an exchange of ideas and an exchange of insights of where are the use cases, what are the applications, and how do we build this industry together. So it can't be academics in an ivory tower. It can't be technologists, sitting in their garage, building it. It really has to be the entire ecosystem working together.
Absolutely. Well, hey, I appreciate you hosting us in your town. Appreciate you jumping on the show.
Thank you for having me, and we're going to have you back next year. I know we're not going live, but at the end of the conference, we're going to announce that the PRN is actually going to take over and lead this conference next year.
Love it.
And we're going to have Cascadia as a title sponsor. So we really hope to make this a long-standing industry event.
Well, this will be airing after this event has wrapped up.
Well, there you go.
People will have the news in hand at that point.
Very
Excellent. Great way to end this segment. Thanks for jumping on, Joel.
Thank you for having me.